all control. Gravity is all that I know. She's over me. She's over me. She comes with her hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. She's over me. In my heart, I can't let go, I'm breaking apart, controlling me, controlling me. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Paranormal Portal Bedtime Stories, and I hope you're having a great night. Welcome to the show. I'm absolutely thrilled you guys are all here, and I hope that everything is going well in your world. It's been an incredibly busy day, but that's just the way it rolls around here. I'm sure you all have been incredibly busy as well, but just know that I love you bunches. I've been doing a little work around the studio here as well, trying to relay out a few things, but you can't see it in all its glory yet, but hopefully it's looking a little better. I don't know. Just trying some ideas here, ladies and gentlemen. Keeping it fresh up here in the studios. Keeping it fresh. So anyway, I don't know. Let's see. Anything that I feel like I should say first of all? Oh, yeah. First of all, I hope that you guys will call in tonight. It's always nice to hear from you guys. The call-in number is 720-923-0500. Again, 720-923-0500. You can always call in during the shows that are recorded live and be a part of it. So if you have something to share in regards to the paranormal, a paranormal experience, a paranormal possibility, et cetera, et cetera. So your thoughts on a paranormal phenomena, by all means, call in and be a part of it, because the show is always accentuated by the integration of all of our voices, I guess. I can sit here and fill the microphone with noise all night, and that's great. And I'm happy to do that, but the show is perpetually improved for every person that becomes a part of it. And that interaction really builds what we can cover here on the show, because I can only speak from one person's perspective. You guys have all kinds of different perspectives, and that's wonderful. So anyway, I just think that it's a wonderful night. Haxer, keep the faith, brother. Dreams don't fold that easy, no matter what. And that's all I can tell you. Just hang in there. But let's see. I got ghost stories for you guys, but I don't know. Are you ready? Because you better be ready, because it's time for bed. All right, ladies and gentlemen, just let me know if you're hearing me okay. I think in that first segment there, my voice was a little quieter. I've since adjusted my fader up a lot more, so if it sounds a little faint or something, let me know in the chat if you would, please. You guys are kind of my offsite producers as you're sitting out there. You're the ones hearing the show, so I hope that you'll let me know if it doesn't sound as good as it needs to. I definitely don't want to be muffled by my own equipment here, but I got some stories lined up. I hope you guys enjoy them. It's always the motivation here to entertain you. The ghost phenomena is so absolutely intriguing and compelling. Now, I've had many, many, many different thoughts about this. This is a phenomenon that, of course, I'm very familiar with, having had many different experiences on my own. And before I started doing the show, I have to tell you, I really thought, is there something wrong with me? Why do I keep having these different phenomena, these different experiences happen? And I really had to do a lot of self-examination. It's like, well, is there something wrong with me? Is there something I'm not seeing the right way? Or, why is this so different than what everybody around me shares and talks about? And, what makes me so different that I'm seeing and experiencing a lot of things, feeling different things. And, I couldn't really articulate it real well because it was just, I felt like, I don't know, like I was just so different from everybody, going through a long period of very different phenomena occurring and really not sure how to process it. I never didn't like it. Not that I actively sought it out either. It kind of just happened. And as it happened, I never recall being terrified. I never recall being scared. But I've certainly been surprised. But I just wondered, well, why doesn't everybody else experience stuff like this? What's going on? Is there something with me? Is it the places I've lived that I just successfully pick a bunch of active places? Or is it me? Is it something going on with me that's creating, this magnetism per se for these events to happen? And so I never really knew. And it was, of course, as you're researching the paranormal, you come across other people that have had a lot of different experiences as well, but you're getting little snapshots. And I tell you, it wasn't until I was doing the show, this very show, that I realized that these events, these phenomena are really not as uncommon as we think. As I've gotten to know so many of you, and as you guys have shared the various things you guys have experienced, it really has created a sense of community for me as well with you, and created a bond of sorts, because we have these similarities. We have these common threads that, and to be honest with you, it's been a wonderful, wonderful thing, not just because I'm doing a show called The Paranormal Portal and there's people showing up to watch it, but because I think that so many of you understand what I'm saying, so that I can go out on a limb and I can say some of these things I've been thinking about, and I don't feel like I need to be awkward about it, because I think you guys are thinking about this stuff just about as much, if not more, than I am. And it's really great to have that community and that forum to be able to share those things. So doing the show has been an incredible experience on so many levels for me, if only because it's something that I'm incredibly passionate about, and I've met a bunch of incredibly passionate people as well. But also because the dialogue and the learning and the experiences, there's so many commonalities, and yet there's so many differences, that each story that's told and each experience that's shared fills in a few more blanks, fills in a few more spaces that kind of give it the cohesive nature. And so it's been incredible. And, again, I've created a show, but you guys created a community here with me. And so thank you guys so much for that. And I really appreciate it. And, keep your information coming. Keep your stories coming. You can certainly call in during the live shows and share those, or you can email them to me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com, and I'll certainly share them for you. But just, again, let me know in the email if you would like to be named or not named, or, what you want to do, because I don't need to expose you. It's not necessary. but it's all on the table there. So, all right. So let's get to some of the stories. The first one tonight is coming out of South Carolina. And what's going on there? I know that you've already heard 1,000 stories just like mine, but if I don't soon get some answers, I may have to move. Here are my facts. I live with my boyfriend in his house, and that is beside and across from a cemetery. Please know that there is a new graveyard and a real old one, but I've never been afraid of graveyards or death or ghost, but that is until I started having these nightmares. My boyfriend's name is Andy, and I sleep in separate rooms. He snores. That'll cause the need to have separate rooms. And I only have these dreams in my room and no other room in the house. Only 2 families have lived in this house, and we have known the previous owners for years, and nothing bad ever happened in this house. So with those facts, here's my dream. I'm sleeping, and I feel something pushing on my bed frame or mattress, and when I open my eyes, there's something in the room with me. Now, I've never felt or seen a ghost in my whole life, so I'm not really sure if I'm just petrified when I wake up or what. Last night I dreamed this thing was in my room and kept trying to roll over, and it was holding me down. And I've even woke up feeling like it was right on top of me, sitting on my chest. And last night it woke me up, and as soon as I opened my eyes, it was sitting on the floor right in front of me, staring at me. And then it just disappeared. I've said out loud several times that it has me scared, completely terrified. I'm not going to use the language they use, and to please let me sleep. I'm at my wit's end. This has been happening now for about 6 months, and please tell me I'm not crazy, and what should I do to get some sleep? Those are really tough situations. And, ladies and gentlemen, we're never more vulnerable than when we're asleep. That is when we are completely vulnerable. We're completely at the mercy of our environment because, we're just not there. We're not aware of what's going on around us. We're in this altered state, so to speak. And so when things like this happen, it's incredibly unnerving, and it's a whole different kind of terror because it's like the perfect predator prey experience. Like, for instance, you look at predatory animals when they prey, they do it in the most efficient manner possible with the least risk of injury for themselves, because if a prey animal gets injured, it won't be able to hunt and take care of itself. It won't have that possibility. And so they will adapt a form of predation that best suits their prey. Whether they're an ambush predator, whether they're a trapping kind of predator, like, for instance, a spider. A spider creates a web, and the prey or the bug or whatever gets in the web, becomes stuck, so it can't flee, it can't do anything. And as it wiggles and tries to defend itself, it just becomes more and more entrapped in this sticky webbing. And so the spider just has to come up, throw a few webs on it, bite it, and then wrap it up and go away and come back and have that smoothie, that bug smoothie or whatever you want to call it. But it seems absolutely cruel in many regards. But if you look at it, it's really an impressive act. And I think the same thing goes for the spiritual kind of predators, as you will, if you will. They, of course, seem to enjoy, in many cases, waiting until people are asleep, and that's when you're at your most vulnerable in many cases. And so then they can come in as you're in this altered state and you're not aware of what's going on. You're just, and if you do become aware, you're already in that web of sorts. You're in that sleep paralysis mode, and you can't really move. You're aware something's going on, and you fight and you work until it ends, and whether by your hand or your action or by other actions. Now, many people in these situations call upon their religion, their faith. Like oftentimes people will call on the name of Jesus to help them, or they will say some affirmation to the light, or, and this isn't about religion, honestly. It isn't, because, religion is a very personal thing, and I am in no way capable of telling you what you should or shouldn't believe. Believe whatever resonates in your heart. But those religious affirmations can be very powerful and offer a lot of protection, and can cause these beings to push away. And the way that works, in my opinion, and I might be wrong here, but the way that works, in my opinion, is that by calling upon that religious figure, or, deity, or whatever, you are aligning yourself with that. And so instantly there is what am I looking for? There's a resonance between you and this energy of your faith, and it strengthens you. And of course, it becomes a barrier around you, depending on the amount of faith you have in that religion. But coming from a place of fear is tough. It's tough to be emboldened enough to call upon your faith when you're already terrified. You're already in a very vulnerable spot, and you feel like something is latching onto you, attaching to you. So it can be hard to muster up that strength within you, but calling on that religion is oftentimes believed to be quite a shield against the negative entities and spirits. So that certainly is something you can do in these situations. Just recently we came across a story that I thought was really interesting, and that is a child was seeing this old hag coming from a darkened kitchen into her room. And her grandmother, I think, was what the story said, told them, if they ever see the old hag, touch someone else. So what this little girl did when she saw this hag was she jumped into the bed of her brother, who was sleeping right next to her, and she still saw the hag getting closer, but it couldn't do anything. And now the idea with that seems really interesting to me, because it implies that by connecting to another person's energy field, it may, you're sharing an energy. Anytime you make contact with somebody, you are sharing an energy field. You're creating a circuit of sorts between you and this other person. Now, in the case of a predatory spiritual being, perhaps that contact somehow creates a resonance in your energy field that they can't quite grab onto in order to feed or do whatever the hell it is they're doing. But they seem to be doing something. But, of course, there's many people that believe they feed on your life force, they're feeding on your energy, they're, et cetera, et cetera. I don't pretend to know. I'm just sharing with you the ideas and thoughts that I've heard. But for some reason, connecting to another person can break the ability of these things to feed. And this person said that the old hag seemed to become frustrated and then disappeared and didn't come back. I'd never heard that before about connecting to another person. So I think that's really profound, and it seems to make sense in terms of an energetic expansion for yourself. And maybe it's much like calling upon your faith. You're reaching out to an energy beyond you. You're connecting to that. Well, the same thing may be able to be accomplished by just reaching out and touching someone who happens to be right near you. So interesting, but those are some things you can do. Of course, there are ideas about how to, cleanse your area. There are symbols and icons that can be hung up, whether they're Christian, whether they're pagan, whether they're Wiccan, whether they're shamanistic, whatever, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't matter. But as long as they are powerful to you, they become imbued with your power and act as a repelling force to anything negative. So there's lots and lots and lots of ideas out there of how to defend yourself against something like this. But this story it doesn't surprise me that she didn't hear of anybody else having this problem in that house, because sometimes it's just the person. Sometimes, there can be generations living in a home of different people coming and going, and nothing will go on until, for some reason, this one person shows up, and then boom, everything in the area comes alive, and they end up living, in a house of terror. Well, it has to do with that person's energy for some reason. And they are most probably are psychic themselves and have quite a bit of ability, but may not know it. It might be a latent ability. And that does seem to act as quite a beacon to a lot of these spirits. And a lot of them probably aren't negative. Actually, they're just desperately trying to connect because they feel like they have something to say or to share. So, very interesting. Just thought I'd throw out those little pearls of wisdom I've gathered, and maybe they'll serve you, maybe they won't. But at the very least, it's interesting. It's an interesting discussion. So, I don't know. Let's get to the next one. This one's coming out of Nebraska. We don't hear from Nebraska too often, and I don't know why. Maybe there just isn't the population density in some of these states. I mean, not maybe. Of course, that's definitely true. That there's places like California we hear about a lot, but then if you look at population densities, it's like, well, yeah, that's why we hear about California a lot. But Nebraska came up, so let's see what's going on there. This event happened before I was born in 1976. It's not firsthand, so I'll just tell you what my mother told me. In the early 70s, my mom and dad bought a small home in Nebraska. It was their second or third house, I'm not sure, and when they moved in, there was a painting from the early 1900s hanging on the wall of the house. It was the only thing in the house. No furniture, no appliances, nothing. My mother told me that the portrait bared a striking resemblance to my dad, but as if he were an old man. At the time, my father was in his early 30s, and the painting made my mother understandably uneased. My parents took the painting down and stored it in the basement, and they lived in that house for a few years before deciding to move outside of town to some other plot of land, and this was before I was born. And my oldest brothers were preteens during the moving process. They discovered the painting that had been there when they first moved in, and neither of them really wanted the painting because it really unnerved them both. They decided to put the portrait back on the wall where they originally found it. They completed packing for the move and never gave it another thought. Once they arrived at their new home, they started to unpack and move into their new house. Subsequently, this is something I mentioned in another story. And when they entered the house during the move, the portrait of the old engineer was hanging on the wall of their bedroom. Wow. They were really concerned at this occurrence. And they ended up taking the painting and storing it in the attic, and it has been up there ever since. I've never laid eyes on it, but I dread the day that I do. That's very interesting. That's that's really curious. I don't know how you explain those things. I mean, there are, of course, apports. Apports, if you're not familiar with the term, is the idea that ghosts can manifest gifts and seemingly out of the ethers. And you'll get perhaps some kind of symbol, or sometimes it's change, like literally coins. Other times it's, maybe a rock or a crystal or something, and it'll just appear in a very awkward place, and this is what is known as an apport. A painting is a pretty significant apport, but I guess the part that's curious is that it already looked like an older version of the father, and he was quite a bit younger at the time, but it seemed to follow them as well. So that is strange. I don't know. I kind of wish there was a follow-up to that so we could hear what's going on with that. Now this is there's another one that has to do with a painting, and since this is an interesting topic, let's read this one because I find that's very, very peculiar. And this is a story just from last year, as a matter of fact, from Georgia. All right, so let's get through the fluffy stuff. It says, this story involves a painting that my mother brought home from an auction when I was about 8 years old. As I've stated in my other stories, my parents imported and exported antiques and wines for many years, but now just antiques. My mother is Russian, but born and grew up in the USA from the age of 3, and always had the love of anything that was old and unusual when it came to things like furniture and other artworks, and something that seems to have rubbed off on me a little bit, as a matter of fact. My parents would always go to auctions and real estate sales, and they would always, or estate sales, I guess, and they'd always like to purchase interesting pieces for their business. It was rare that anything purchased at these sales ever made at home to become part of our home, unless it was really out of the ordinary or my parents were just really liking it too much to part with it. My childhood home looked like a cross between a madman's idea of a yard sale and an antiques market belonging to an insane hoarder. But it made for good, fun, and interesting conversation, and oftentimes really good forts. That's awesome. None of the furniture or artworks previously bothered me as far as I can remember, until my mom purchased a painting by an unknown artist. It was never been signed, and our research was never uncovered who did paint it or who the subject actually is. And all we know is that the family who put it in the auction bought the home and had found it in it. And they didn't like the painting or several pieces of furniture that the previous owners had left. So off to the sales they went. And it was really a large lot of over 50 items. And my mom purchased the painting in a sideboard full of silverware and plates of various ages locked inside, and we got them open. And after we got it home, it was strange, as my mother had been told it was empty. Not so much as it turned out. The painting depicts a woman of about 30 years of age, maybe older, it's kind of hard to tell, wearing a long blue-gray gown, standing in a veranda of a very old house, and next to her is a table with a tea set and a kettle and what looks like some cake or sandwiches on a plate. There are some flowers in a chair and part of a window, and whoever did the painting had a lot of talent, as the detail is absolutely incredible. It was probably painted around 1900 or 1910 by the fashion that she's wearing. My mother brought it home, and we hung it up in the hallway next to my parents' bedroom, between the main bathroom and a little room my dad used to do his paperwork in. I felt really strange around this painting from day one that it was hung up. The hallway in the summer was comfortable and not too warm, but the painting was hung in the area around the painting turned almost ice cold. Passing the painting, I'd get goosebumps on whatever exposed skin I had. I also started feeling like the lady in the painting was watching me. My twin sister started saying that they didn't like looking at the paintings, or the painting rather, as it made them really uncomfortable and like they weren't meant to be around it. And my baby brother would walk on the other side of the hallway to it. And when asked why, he'd say he didn't like the lady, or when asked why, he'd just say he didn't like the lady and that he was cold when he looked at her. He was about 5 at the time, almost 6 years old. And soon it went past just feelings in the hallway. At night, we'd start hearing whispers that hadn't been there previously. And our house already had its share of spooky behavior, but we got used to this, but this was brand new. Movement of a flash of blue-gray like a dress out of the corner of your eye, a strange touch occasionally in the hallway and when no one else was around. And this may sound like something from the Tales from the Crypt, but I promise you, this isn't something I saw on TV. I only wished that it was. After my father, who is 6'5" and 350 pounds of him, got a cold hand run up his back when he was in the shower, was any real notice of what we had all said to our parents. We were used to the other ghosts in the house, and we at first thought, oh, it's just another spirit making itself known to us, as it's new here. But things got bad, fast. My baby brother, we'll call him Adam, was tripped on the stairs and pushed by a cold hand when he tried to get up again. The big fern we had in the hall next to the painting suddenly started dying. It was over 20 years old and had no previous problems. When moved away from the painting, it went back to being fine, and it's still alive today, but one side of it looks a little mangled. The side that used to be facing the painting was never the same. The branches grew back, weird, like something had almost infected them. It was checked out and tested by a plant specialist, and they couldn't find anything wrong with the old plant. Our dogs, named Frankie and Dex, they were both terrier mixes, but they wouldn't go past the painting without whining or growling at it. And they were normally very placid and gentle dogs. Our aunt's dog, whose name was Lula, and she was a poodle, had to be carried past it when we used to babysit her. She just wouldn't go past it or even look at it. Our cats tried to claw at it one time when it fell off its hook onto the ground, and our normally placid Maine Coon cats both went nuts trying to scratch it until we took it away. It started coming off the hook every night and sat against the wall upright every morning when no one touched it. My mother is a really spiritual person who put up with friendly spirits in the house with a grain of salt, as they didn't bother her, decided that this painting had to go, as something was really wrong with it, to which we all agreed. So off to the auctions it went, and several times. My mother, who knew the buyers, found out they only kept it a month. They too heard whispers, and their cat also attacked the painting. And they gave it to a neighbor who liked it, and the neighbor sold it after her dog freaked out around it. It kept getting sold on or auctioned or given away until 2014, when a man who collected art in Florida bought the painting and didn't know of its history. Having again tried to research its past, he only found out it was possibly a painting of an artist's wife who died young. I don't know if that's true or not. There's no real record of the artwork anywhere, and it's not signed, and the man who owned it last I heard keeps it in his basement, as it frightened his grandchildren, and he says he won't sell it and keeps it locked up, and I think he too knows something isn't right with it. I'm worried, as he's old, what's going to happen when he dies. This painting isn't safe. Either a ghost is in it or attached to it, and it doesn't like people at all. It's not friendly. So please, anyone, if you see this painting, let me know. It really should be destroyed. I know it probably sounds like a made-up story for kids. An adult man like myself shouldn't be weary of an old painting of someone unknown, but this painting is dangerous. Please destroy it if you buy it. It's really not worth the trouble. I'm sorry, it's a long story. I wasn't going to post it until I talked to my brother Adam. And apparently this painting still scares them to this day. And yeah, that's a pretty dark thing. I don't know. We often talk about the whole concept of spirits becoming attached. So we most often commonly think that there's houses that are haunted. There are houses that have had some kind of tragedy. Something happened in them, something tragic, something horrible, and presto, you have a haunted house. I mean, that's just the common thread, right? But it doesn't always have to be that way. Many times you can introduce a spirit into your home by doing things like antiquing or whatever, and it doesn't happen often. I don't mean to imply that at all. In fact, it's still really quite rare, but there was a show that was on television quite a while ago, and it was hosted by John Zaffis and his daughter and their team, and it was called The Haunted Collector. And I don't know if you're familiar with that show or not, but that really was a pretty good show for at least illuminating the whole idea that their items can be haunted. So, your house can be fine, and you bring in something from a thrift store or a yard sale or an antique store or whatever, a swap meet. You bring it into your home and suddenly things are changing. Suddenly something is different. So if you ever notice that there's activity peaking up in your home, in your life, and you can't really figure out, what's going on, one of the things you can do is just look at what have you brought home, What did you bring home? Have you brought anything home that was pre-owned? Did you find something that you brought into your home? It doesn't always have to be a purchase. It can be a found thing or whatever. Now, there are plenty of dark practices that speak of binding beings to objects. Haunted dolls, for instance, can be the result of a ritual practice of some sort, a dark ritual practice, I should say. They can just be something that was deeply loved by someone, and maybe that someone was disturbed. And so they don't like someone else owning what they loved, and so they want to lash out at them. It could be something to that nature. So it's a weird concept, I understand, but if you do buy something or come across something, and before you bring it into your house, just as a good practice, it might be good to introduce it into your home slowly. Maybe sage it even before you bring it in. I mean, what can it hurt, right? So I don't ever mean to imply that, look out, the paranormal's everywhere, because it is and it isn't. Most of the paranormal, of course, is very benign. It's not all creepy, scary, spooky, Halloween-y kind of stuff. It's just there are things that we don't understand going on in our world. We can't understand them, but it doesn't mean you should be afraid. And I don't ever mean to imply that, but I think there are just some good practices. So the whole thing is that I'm pretty sure that we're swimming in a world of spirits. I mean, literally, if we could see all of the things that are around us, and this is something I brought up on the show a few times, but if you look at our abilities, our eyes can see a certain wavelengths of the full spectrum of light. But there's a whole lot more light on either side of that spectrum that we can't see. There's probably even light within that spectrum that we really can't see well. And so are there things that naturally exist in that spectrum of light that we don't normally see? The same thing with our hearing. We can hear a certain spectrum of sound from a certain hertz to a certain kilohertz, and then, we're deaf. That's why you can blow a dog whistle and not really, not really be bothered by it, because it doesn't register to our ears. But it certainly does to dogs. But there again, there are so many sounds lower and higher, and are there things that exist there? And not necessarily in both the light and the auditory. These are just different wavelengths of energy that we can perceive. But we have a very limited perception range. We don't have a real broad range. Now there are things like infrared and ultraviolet that allow us to see beyond our normal means and get an idea what could be there. And there are several amazing captures of weird anomalies that people have caught, being able to see in those extra wavelengths of light. And EVPs are a good example of things that exist in a different wavelength of sound than what we're normally able to perceive. So, most often EVPs are, they're not heard by the naked ear. If they are, if you're walking through your house and, you're hearing something as well as recording it, then it can be an EVP, but it's also a disembodied voice. So it was meant to be something heard. So again, my point is that we swim in an ocean of these possibilities just because we're not equipped to experience all of our reality. We just aren't. And that's where technology is probably bridging the distance, and spiritual development helps to bridge the distance too, so that we can become aware through other means, whether through meditation and getting in touch with your natural abilities. Like all people seem to have this sense to know when they're being watched. How do you know you're being watched? If you're not looking at something, but you feel the weight of somebody staring at you, and then you turn and look and somebody's staring at you, how can we know that? Well, that is an extrasensory perception. There's no reason you should be aware of that by our normal means. So we are all capable of these extra senses. I believe that it's by birth. We all are endowed with these abilities to some degree or another. But things like meditation and stuff are great for helping to tune that in. Oh, Elaine Clifford, nice to meet you. So that's a new name. I haven't seen you. And we got quite a few people in here tonight. So great, guys. Thank you so much for coming. Yes, Duke. Duke says the spidey sense. Duke, of course, is our good friend and who is also the host of World Bigfoot Radio on YouTube. And you want to catch some great shows, check it out. We do have a call, though. I see our good friend Mr. MCAT is calling. How you doing, brother?
Hey, buddy, what's going on?
I'm doing good, brother. How you doing?
I'm hanging in there.
Yeah?
It's been kind of an interesting day, but,
Has it?
that's how they go.
Everything okay?
Yeah, we're good. It's all
Okay.
going to work out.
Excellent, brother. I'm glad to hear that. I just had my Ghost app on before the show, and it said two words before the show, and I was gonna get a hold of you because I thought, well, maybe this relates to you. I don't know. And again, full disclosure, I'm not really a great believer that that's really accurate, but it said two words. It said 94, and it said truck.
94 truck.
So,
Wow, that's funny.
or it's Highway 94, Interstate 94, maybe. I don't know.
It could be because I'm close to that area. I'm up in Michigan, so
Well, be careful, brother.
I got some. You got some. Oh, I'm always careful.
I know you are.
I got no hands on the wheel while I'm eating a cheeseburger and I'm wiping my mouth with the American flag. That's just how we do things.
Nice. You got your Star Spangled underwear on then too?
Of course I do.
Aw,
Pajama pants, Star Spangled pajama pants.
awesome. Awesome. So
Anyway,
what's on your mind tonight, brother?
I wanted that you were mentioning the kind of the things that we see and the things that we hear and the constraints that we have to because of our physiology. And I wanted to bring up a couple of quick things about physiology of the eyeball and then kind of how
Please.
that's what I've been learning about how that works.
Excellent.
And the interesting thing is, we are visual creatures, but sight is very expensive brain-wise. We have to utilize a significant amount of brain power to process all that imagery.
Okay.
And we've got this fovea right in the center of our vision that's just zipping around like mad, trying to pick everything up. And it doesn't always pick things up. There was an experiment done late 90s, early 2000s, where these graduate students had to watch a video of 6 players on a basketball court.
Uh-huh.
And there was 3 in white and 3 in black. And so your job was to count how many times the white team passed the basketball. And so you come up with 15, which is the right answer.
Okay.
So you tell the professor, and he says, "Did you see the gorilla?" And he says, you're like, "What gorilla? Watch the tape again, but this time don't count." And sure enough, a man in a gorilla suit halfway through the video walks out in the middle, right in the middle of the camera, beats his chest, and walks back off. And only 50% of the students saw the gorilla.
Wow. That's pretty hardcore, yeah.
So when we're concentrating on something, that's what our fovea is used for, because it's a resource that we don't have a lot of supply for. So we only use that to things that we're concentrating on, and we miss a lot of peripheral things that we're not concentrating on.
Uh-huh.
Another common thing that we hear is, especially paranormal stories, we hear, "I saw it out of the corner of my eye."
Mm-hmm.
So that's the peripheral of our vision. That's populated by rods, which only see in black and white, and their primary use really is for movement detection.
Oh, okay.
You can't see very clearly out of your peripheral, but you can definitely detect things that are moving. And so that's why we hear that a lot. I saw it out of the corner of my eye.
Okay.
It's you're seeing something move.
That's wild, yeah.
So
And I've had that experience many times myself. In fact, many times recently, in the recent past days, I've seen a bunch of things out of the corner of my eye. And of course, when you look, there's nothing there that we can perceive.
Yeah.
But again, I think that it has everything to do with, at that point. Then I wonder if they're actually more supercharged, just for any interplay in the light. That peripheral vision that is not in our direct vision.
yeah, and it seems that there's been a lot more visual evidence in the UV field than there has in the IR field. I don't know why. but that's just how it seems to be playing out. If you're running full spectrum, you're going to pick up. There seems to be more anomalies picked up in UV than there is in IR.
That's really interesting. Now, speaking of UV, that I thought was really interesting, and this came up. Of course, you met Lisa Martin when you were on the panel show with the Investigators show.
Yeah.
She was on the last time she was on before that show. She talked about, or maybe it's the time before, but anyway, she talked about she doesn't use the UV spectrum lights anymore, or because what she got from EVPs when they were using it was the light burns. The light burns. And so I'm wondering about that. I mean,
was she using a UV light?
Yes, she was.
So she had something that was emitting a UV light.
Yeah, that's what I took from it. Yes. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, that's interesting that she got an EVP that says the light burns.
Right.
Because I'm running a system that's totally passive. I don't have any UV lights out. It's just a UV camera.
Okay. So full spectrum camera, but it just gathers. It doesn't project. Okay.
Yeah, I don't run any lights when I run it. I run it passive. It cuts down on a lot of superfluous anomalies, things that dust, pollen, bugs, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, another kind of camera, since we're kind of in this topic now, that I'm really excited to learn more about, is the starlight cameras. And Dan Pruitt, another person you met when you were on that show, he uses one of those, and his idea is that you want to add as little to the environment as you can, and certainly light is a different energy, and so it may actually alter what you can view. But with the starlight cameras, they're just extraordinarily sensitive, and even in real darkness, they can take pictures and film that appear to be daylight. I mean, they're just so sensitive.
As opposed to using IR, because you have to send out an IR light in order to illuminate whatever. Yeah, I see what he's getting at.
Yeah.
I don't have a starlight scope. I've got a thermal.
Oh yeah.
It's a FLIR thermal that it's short range. It's about 100 yards, but inside a house or in a backyard or something, it works pretty effectively.
Yeah, that's
and it's all passive.
Now, how have you done with that? Because I've seen some pretty interesting thermal hits, and it seems like they're capturing all kinds of weirdness in the form of blue anomalies that weren't white or yellow or red, but they were really cool. But they were still a temperature variant from their atmosphere that were shaped like human beings. Have you ever caught anything like that?
No, not really. It's inside. You have to be careful on the color spectrum on thermal, because heat will reflect.
Oh, sure.
On a lot of surfaces that you wouldn't think that would reflect heat, and so sometimes you can get a false positive.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah, that is a good point. Heat is really reflective off a lot of surfaces, and then again, infrared is actually a light band. It's a light wavelength, so. But it does bounce. Mm-hmm. So very cool, brother. I don't know. I think that the whole eye stuff is really interesting. And now here's another interesting thing that I experienced myself at the Science Museum in Minnesota. They had this human body exhibit going on at the time, and this is years ago, but they had this one station that shows you that there is a severe blind spot, even where we don't normally believe there is, and it's actually just off center. To either side, either off center to the left or off center to the right, depending on the eye. But they have these two dots up on the wall that are just off the center, and the idea is to start at one line and you walk slowly towards the second line, and by the time you get to the second line, those two big black dots, don't exist anymore. And it's like, the way they explain it is that that's just a gap in the construction of our eyes, but our brain fills it in and makes it seem like a continuous scene. But it's actually unable to perceive that one weird direction of light.
That's interesting. Now I know that they're in low light vision. There's you've got blindness right in the center of your vision,
Uh-huh.
And that's because the center of your vision is populated with cones, and they collect light or color.
Okay.
And since there isn't any color at night or in a dark room, and you've got less dense, or there's not a lot of rods in the center.
Uh-huh.
So if you ever been driving down the road and you see a light out of your left door, you turn to look at it and it's gone.
Uh-huh.
And you turn back and it's back again. And you turn back to look at, so you can't look at things directly, especially low illuminated things.
Okay.
And so pilots have a way to kind of counteract that. It's called offset viewing,
Mm-hmm.
where you're looking at things without directly looking at them. You kind of look around them.
Sure. It's like stargazing. If you look directly at the stars, it's hard to see them. But if you try to look at a star just a little off center, then it comes into full view.
Right.
Yep.
Yep. That's the idea behind it.
And those are great examples of things existing, even though we can't perceive them, they're still there. Like those dots are still there in that exhibit I was talking about, and those lights are still there. It's just that these are the quirks of our body, and we rely on that completely to identify what is reality, and that's where the failing is, I think.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
Oh, great, brother. So when you're in my neck of the woods, you got to let me know.
Oh, yeah, I will. I'll let you know. All right, man. Have a good night. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks so much for always being a part of the show. It's really great to hear from you, and what you bring to the show is always awesome, brother. Thank you so much.
Yep, you're welcome, buddy. I'll talk to you later.
Okay. Take care.
All right, man. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, our good friend, Mr. MCAT, Mr. Mike Hetzel, he's a paranormal investigator, and he's done some great things and brought some amazing information to the shows. It's always a lot of fun to talk to him and to hear what's going on in his world at any given time. But he's got a lot of experience, and so clearly, listening to him, you can tell that he's not only interested in the subject matter, but he's continually researching the subject matter to learn more. And, I think there's so many people that are part of the show that do just that. We have so many very gifted and talented people that are on the show. And speaking of that, tomorrow night on the Portal, Mrs. Deborah Varner is going to be with us doing free psychic readings. So make sure you tune in 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and catch the show. You call in early and hold on the line, because I will make every effort to get to every call that comes in. But there's only so much show, so make sure you call in early. Don't wait till a lot of other people call in, because the queue is probably really full by then. Not that we won't still probably get you in, but it's just easier if you call in right away. Then you're guaranteed a spot. So with as much as we can do. But anyway, wow. This night's gone really well. I spent a lot of time on the soapbox tonight. It's just I love talking to you guys. I love sharing these thoughts, and I love it when you guys call in and share your thoughts, because it's one thing to sit here on the Bedtime Stories and share stories. I mean, there are fantastic stories. I can't vouch for anything, whether they're authentic or not. I can't tell unless they're stuff you guys submit to me. Then I believe in them 100%. But any of these painting stories tonight, I have no idea if they're actually real or just creative fabrications. But the phenomenon they're talking about, whether these stories themselves are real or not, they are discussing phenomena that has been reported many times. And so if that's the case, even if these stories aren't real, people have experienced very similar things by bringing objects into their home. And I guess that's kind of the theme for tonight, is bringing things into your home. Be careful bringing things into your home. Make sure to cleanse them. Pray over them. Use holy water. Whatever you want to do. Whatever resonates with you. Clean things before you bring them into your home, especially if you have a family. And if you live alone, it's bad enough. But if you have little ones and, loved ones, then, you don't want to bring things in that might, cause problems for your whole family. So take a few minutes, or, a full day, or whatever it takes. But give them, use prayers, use holy water, use sage, use salt, whatever you want to do. Use incantations, meditations, whatever. But make sure to clean things before you bring them in your house. Again, the chances of it happening are very low, but The point is not can it happen, it's that it does happen. So be careful. Be careful out there, people. So I think that's going to wrap it up because we're at about the 55-minute mark here on the Paranormal Portal. But I will be back tomorrow night with Mrs. Deborah Varner, and we'll be doing the readings. So I hope you guys will have a wonderful night. Have a great day tomorrow, and we'll be waiting for you back here on the portal. So good night, everybody. Love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. Help each other out. Find the magic in every day and try to laugh as much as you can. All right, guys, take care and sweet dreams.